Okay, I want you to imagine just for a second a slush fund so incredibly massive that it almost defies belief. 250 million rupees. Yeah, that's 250 crores. And here's the crazy part. This wasn't some corporate acquisition budget or a giant government infrastructure grant. According to these stunning revelations made right on the floor of the Maharashtra State Assembly, this was a bounty, literally a war chest gathered by an organized crime syndicate, all for one single, highly specific purpose. They wanted to orchestrate the bureaucratic transfer of just one honest government officer.
So you gotta ask yourself, what exactly is this guy doing that makes him a 250 crore threat to a syndicate? Well, the answer is honestly terrifying. He threatened a deadly, highly organized, and infinitely profitable business model that targets the most vulnerable aspect of our daily lives. He went after the very food we feed our families every single day.
Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into something that is, frankly, pretty chilling to uncover. We're going to decode exactly how food mafias manage to infiltrate our daily lives, why they specifically target society at large, and how one absolutely fearless officer managed to crack their entire system. Let's get right into it. All right, starting with Section 1, the business of poison, and how watchdogs become accomplices. Because to understand the cure, we first really need to understand the disease of systemic corruption. Let's just rewind a bit to May 2024. You had corrupt officials literally taking bribes to clear toxic food. Down at a regional office of the Food Safety and Standards Authority of India, an assistant director was caught red-handed taking a 1.2 lakh rupee bribe. And for what? Just to slap a standard quality label on a totally toxic food sample? And the sheer scale of this betrayal? It's all in the numbers. If you look at the 2025 to 2026 parliamentary data, out of over 223,000 food samples tested nationwide, more than 40,000 failed. That means 1 in every 5 samples of food out there was completely unfit for human consumption. And the accountability for poisoning the nation? Out of all those failures, only 198 people were actually punished. I mean, the system was basically an open invitation. Pay a bribe, sell poison, and walk away a millionaire. And look, here is the really tragic reality of that equation. We aren't just talking about a bad stomachache here. We're talking about fatal consequences. 22 children lost their lives in Bihar eating school midday meals. 12 people died in Karnataka simply eating temple prasad. And this perfectly answers our core question for today. Why do food mafias target society? Because daily essentials, things like milk, grains, spices, they have guaranteed massive recurring demand. If a syndicate can substitute real food with cheap toxic chemicals, they're literally monetizing human survival. Their entire business model relies on turning a blind eye to mass casualties. Moving on to Section 2, mass murder for profit, the economics of fake food. Because the mafia was absolutely thriving right up until May 2026, when a legendary, uncompromising IAS officer named Tukaram Mundhe was appointed as the new FTA commissioner. So Mundhe comes from a farming family, and he's already famous for having survived 25 transfers in his career purely because he refuses to bow to corruption. And now he's in charge of the health of 120 million people. Literally within 10 minutes of taking the chair, he completely shattered the mafia's profit model. See, under the old system, if you found cockroaches in a restaurant kitchen, it meant a measly 10,000 rupee fine. Selling expired goods, a 5,000 rupee fine. It was just a petty cost of doing business for them. But Mundhe, he announced a new system of absolute zero tolerance. No more fines. If you play with human lives, your shop is sealed, and if any inspector takes a bribe, they go straight to jail. And he immediately put those words into action. After looking at some truly terrifying lab reports of synthetic milk, he ordered a 2 a.m. raid on this massive, completely unlit tin shed warehouse on the outskirts of Chhatrapati Sambhaji Nagar. And inside, there wasn't a single cow. Instead, they walked into an industrial nightmare. Floors covered in this foul-smelling white chemical, literal drums of urea and synthetic powder being mixed with water, and a special foaming oil added right on top just to make it look like fresh milk. So the warehouse manager actually tries to call a local MLA to stop the raid, but Mundhe just snatches the phone and smashes it against the wall. He sealed the entire warehouse on the spot. His mindset was crystal clear. He said, "This isn't milk adulteration, it's mass murder preparation." And in just 2 months, Mundhe's team poured 1.5 lakh liters of fake milk and 35 tons of toxic paneer right onto the streets. Real milk suddenly vanished from the markets for a bit, simply because the fake suppliers went completely underground out of sheer terror. Which brings us to Section 3, the Gutka Syndicate, upgrading to organized crime. Because after completely dismantling the milk mafia, Mundhe turned his sights on a massive underground economy. Despite a statewide ban, this highly carcinogenic tobacco mixture, known as gutka, was being openly sold on literally every street corner. So Mundhe formed a special task force with one incredibly strict rule: target the giant interstate distributors, not the small street vendors. And the results? Absolutely staggering. Through rapid-fire intelligence and coordinated strikes across 203 different locations in just 7 days, he seized 34.66 crore rupees worth of banned gutka in his very first month. We're talking sealing 86 massive warehouses and arresting 102 syndicate members. As you can guess, the syndicate panicked. They started sending anonymous death threats to Mundhe, telling him to back off and think of his family. But what was Mundhe's response? He weaponized the law. He pushed to apply MOCA, that's the Maharashtra Control of Organized Crime Act, against the food mafia. Now, this is a draconian law, typically reserved for underworld dons and literal terrorists. It makes getting bail almost impossible. Mundhe was sending a very clear message here. Poisoning our food is an act of organized terror against society. All right, Section 4, exposing elite kitchens, the illusion of elite safety. Because up until this point, a lot of people thought food adulteration only really affected those cheap roadside stalls. But Mundhe was about to completely dismantle that myth. He proved that this cost-cutting corruption actually reaches the plates of society's absolute elites. His teams raided the Cricket Club of India, a place where membership costs a literal fortune. And they found fungus on the vegetables, rotting meat, and cockroaches just roaming the kitchen, sealed. The Gorgan Sports Club, they were operating without a food license altogether, sealed. They hit the 110-year-old highly trusted Parsi dairy farm, sealed for gross, unhygienic conditions. And the iconic 73-year-old K. Rustam ice cream parlor. The FDA found live rats running through the kitchen and expired flavoring agents, sealed. The media obviously went into an absolute frenzy, questioning if he was maybe being a bit too harsh on Mumbai's cultural heritage. But Mundhe just fired right back. He said, heritage doesn't mean you can serve garbage. Old doesn't mean you're above the law. And he's right. If a roadside stall gets shut down for rats, why on earth should a VIP club get a free pass? Suddenly, top-tier restaurants across the entire city began these panic-induced cleaning sprees overnight. Cooks who used to work with bare, sweaty hands were suddenly wearing hairnets and gloves. Which leads into Section 5, the 250 crore conspiracy. The Empire Strikes Back. Because the food mafia certainly wasn't going to just roll over and give up. They deployed their absolute ultimate weapon: extreme wealth and political influence. And this is exactly where that 250 crore rupee slush fund we talked about earlier came into play. But it wasn't just underworld money, no. The biggest hotel and restaurant associations in the entire country actually lobbied the prime minister and the chief minister directly. They had some really desperate demands. They wanted the immediate suspensions stopped immediately. If they got caught, they wanted a comfortable 15 to 30 days notice to, improve. But the most telling demand is that last one. They literally begged to stop the name and shame policy in the media. They didn't care about paying fines. What terrified the elite food lobby was public brand destruction. They were terrified of the public finding out what was actually cooking in their expensive, exclusive kitchens. The fight even reached the Bombay High Court when a 5-star hotel appealed their suspension. And in this really stunning moment, the judge actually favored the hotel, questioning why license should be suspended over just, quote, 2 small insects found in a dish. The judge even jokingly asked Mundhe's team if they ever dared to check government canteens. Well, guess what? The very next day, completely without warning, the FDA raided and sealed the High Court's own unhygienic canteen. Mundhe proved that absolutely no one was above the law. All right, final part, Section 6. The public strikes back, the ultimate cure. So with court rulings starting to go against him and this immense mounting political pressure, a transfer order for Mundhe seemed totally imminent. But then the public finally stepped in. This massive organic uprising just swept across Maharashtra. Huge signature campaigns were literally blocking traffic in Pune. Out in rural areas, people were actually pouring pure milk over photos of Mundhe as a show of deep respect. The political cost of transferring him suddenly became way too high, and the politicians were completely forced to back down. And this brings us to a really fascinating realization. Look at these numbers. The Maharashtra FDA needs about 2,100 officers to properly monitor 120 million people. Yet, they only have 350 food inspectors and 60 drug officers. They are running on less than a sixth of what they actually need. Yet, despite that, Mundhe broke the mafia in just 2 months. It brilliantly illustrates that sheer numbers really don't matter if the system is corrupt. Unyielding administrative intent and having an incorruptible leader matter far, far more than thousands of compromised watchdogs.
Ultimately, Tukaram Mundhe proved that the food mafia targets us precisely because they bank on the fact that we just assume the system is protecting us. Consumer ignorance is their absolute greatest, most profitable weapon. So as we wrap up this explainer, you really have to stop and ask yourself, are you absolutely sure the food on your plate today is safe? Stay aware, question what you're consuming, and demand real accountability, because at the end of the day, your health is their business. Thanks so much for joining me today. Keep learning, and I'll catch you in the next one.